Hello everyone, this is Dr. E, and for today we're going to learn how to calculate our square root without using technology. Finding the value of your square roots can be extremely simple and it can also be complicated. And for today, we're going to be learning how to estimate our square roots without using our calculator or any form of technology. Now, notations, it's important in mathematics, and we know that when we write square root, like this one, we read this as square root of x. But we know that we don't usually write square root with a 2 in this particular example. That's why we can get rid of that. And by getting rid of that, we are simplifying our notation because it's understood that this is a square root of a number. And finding the square root of a number can be extremely simple if you know your multiplication table, and also if the square root that we're looking for are square roots of perfect squares. And these are the perfect squares in our multiplication table, which is in our diagonals. And if we know our perfect squares really well, we'll be able to answer problems like square root of 9, which we know is 3 times 3. That's why square root of 9 is equal to 3. And if we have square root of 64, knowing that we have mastered our multiplication table, factoring 64 is just 8 times 8, and square root of that, of course, is simply 8. And if we have square root of 100, knowing our multiplication table, we know it's just going to equal to 10. And if we have square root of 1, square root of 1 is also a perfect square. That is why we can simplify this into an integer which is equal to 1. Now, how about square root of 2? If we don't know how, 2, as we know, is not a perfect square. It can be the smallest prime number, but we certainly know that there is no number that when you multiply by itself will equal to 2. So if we need to find the actual value of square root of 2, we may need to use our calculator or simply write square root of 2 as our answer if needed. So this is how we use our multiplication table in finding the square root of our perfect square. So let's see what technique that we can use to find the value or the estimated value of our square root of a number that is not a perfect square, like square root of 141. And we're going to find its estimated value to its nearest hundredths. So that means 2 decimal places after our whole number. So let's start with our technique. So to be able to do this, this is one technique that you can use to estimate the value of a square root of this irregular number without using our calculator. So for square root of 141, you just need to think of 2 perfect squares that's close to 141, and those 2 perfect squares would be 121 and 144. Because by doing so, knowing that 121 and 144 is in between 141, if we take the square root of all of these, square root of 121 will give us 11, and square root of 144 is equal to 12. So that means by estimating our value, square root of 141 is 11 point something, because square root of 141 should be in between 11 and 12, not less than 11, but also not greater than 12. So it's going to be in between 11 and 12, so 11 point something will be our answer. So all we need to do is to figure out our decimal value, and to do that, all we need to do is to use our perfect squares estimates. So 121, 144, 140, 141, and 144, and we're going to find a rational number that will help us estimate our decimal value. And how are we going to do that? 141 up to 121, you are just going to subtract it like so, and subtract 144 and 121 similar to this method. And now, by getting the difference of the two expressions that we have here, 141 minus 121 is equal to 20, and 144 minus 121 is going to give us 23, and now we have 20 over 23 as an estimated value for our decimal places in between 11 and 12 for our square roots. So how are we going to change this into decimal form? We don't need to use the calculator because we are estimating it using our skill in long division. So we're going to divide 23 like so. And we know that this is going to be a proper fraction. So that means 23 cannot go to 20 evenly. So we're going to add another zero. So we'll have 200, and we're going to think of a number or how many times 23 can go to 200, and that is 8 times. And 8 divided by 23 is 184. And if we subtract 200 and 184, it will give us 16. And we cannot divide 23 by 16 again, so we're going to add another zero. So now we have 160. So if we're going to divide or find how many times 23 can go to 160, it will be 6 times. That's why you need to know your multiplication table really well. And from here, you can stop because we're able to produce the hundredths digit that we need for the estimated value of square root of 141. So square root of 141 is approximately equal to 11.86, and we're able to solve this using long division. Now, if you need to estimate your square root to the nearest thousandths, 10,000ths, and so on, you're just going to continue working with your long division to be able to complete your estimated value of your square root. And that is how we find the square root of 141 without using our calculator. So first, you need to find your estimated perfect squares that's close to 141, and we have 121 and 144, and we know that square root of 121 is 11, and square root of 144 is 12, and finding out the decimal value is dependent on our perfect squares. So we started with 141 minus 121, and we got 20 as their difference, and then 144 and 121, and their difference is 23. And now we have our rational number that will help us find the estimated decimal value for square root of 141. So now we know that it's 0.86 using our long division, and we're able to produce the decimal placement or the decimal value that will help us find the square root of 121, which is 11, added it to the decimal value that we found using long division, which is equal to 20 over 23, which is 0.86, and we're going to add those together. That's why we have 11.86 as the estimated value of square root of 141. And this is one technique that you can use to estimate the value of your square root that happens to be not a perfect square. So let's try this approach again now with square root of 46. And we know that square root of 46 is not a perfect square. So we're going to think of the two perfect squares that will help us estimate our square root of 46. So square root of 46, the two perfect square that we can use here would be 36 and 49. Because we know that 36 or square root of 36 is equal to 6, and square root of 49 is equal to 7, and square root of 46 is in between these two perfect square, so that means our answer is going to be 6 point something. And to be able to find that point something, we're going to need 36, 46, and 49 by finding the difference between 46 and 36, and 49 and 36, we'll be able to produce the rational number that will help us with our estimate. So 46 minus 36 is equal to 10, and 49 minus 36 is equal to 13, and now we have 10 over 13 that we're going to divide using long division because we cannot use our calculator this time. So we'll have 13 out and 10 in. We just need to find two decimal value or our hundredth estimate or hundredths estimated value for the square root of 46. So how many times 13 goes to 100? 7 times. 7 times 13 is 91. And we subtract it. 100 minus 91 is equal to 9. And we need to add another 0. So now we can divide 90 and 13. How many times 13 goes to 90? 6 times, and 6 times 13 is equal to 78. And now you can stop because even if you can divide this, you don't need to do another step because we're able to produce the hundredths digit that we're looking for that will complete our estimated value for square root of 46, which happens to be 6.76. 76, and this will be our estimated value using our technique that we have just done a while ago. So, recap, the two perfect squares would be 36 and 49, so that means our estimated value of square root of 46 is 6 point something, and that point something is going to, or we're going to be able to find that decimal value by using 46 and 36 and finding its difference, and 49 and 36 and finding its difference. And now we have our rational number, which is 10 over 13. And this fraction can be turned into a decimal by dividing it using long divisions. And using long division, we know that 0.76 is what we have found from our work right here. And now all we need to do is to put 6 and 0.76 together, and that will be the estimated value of square root of 46. And that is our lesson for today. So your Numberbender challenge is to approximate the value of square root of 240 to the nearest hundreds without using your calculator or your cell phone or your computer, because this technique is what we can use in approximating the value of the square root of a number that happens to be not a perfect square. And this is our lesson on rational numbers and how mastery of the multiplication table is going to help us in answering problems similar to what we have just done today. This is Dr. E, and see you again next time.